Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly, too. USA Prepares. And we're delighted you're here. Broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. We've got a call-in line if you'd like to connect with us. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Listen line, 605-477-3249. Captain John Regan's with us. Welcome, Captain John Regan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, 5 years, John. 5 years. We have been broadcasting together. Well, this will be one broadcast after 5 years, right?
Yes, it was February 22nd on 2012 when I first came on to talk about the financial state of the union.
Yeah.
Not much has changed since.
Well, I was reading some of the stories about some of the companies. We talk about the economy not doing all that well. And when Barry was at the helm, the news was, the economy was robust, and at least that's what they were saying. But we're looking at stores closing. We're looking at Sears, Kmart, a large appliance store is going under. I mean, so many bankruptcies. Gander Mountain, I read a post last night about Gander Mountain. They may be headed toward bankruptcy. Gander Mountain. I mean, that's an icon of the sporting goods industry. A lot of people go there and buy their cartridges and firearms and sporting goods. And, it looks like malls are having a tough time. Who goes to malls? I don't.
Family Christians closing all their stores.
And how long have they been in business? About 80 years, maybe, something like that?
I think it's 85, something like that.
Right. So things don't look all that good for brick and mortar. And so why is that, John? I have a thought. It's the way I handle my transactions. If I have a choice of paying less overall for something online without having to go there and not having to pay those ridiculous taxes upon taxes, which is in many places in the state of Missouri over 8% sales tax, I'd prefer not to do that. I would. So what has happened is these cities have piled taxes on us when we buy things. And it has driven us toward, for one reason, it's driven us toward e-commerce. And heck, I can buy things from China. I got a shipment of light bulbs, John, for our old Jeep, a 1995 Jeep that we use on the farm, to go bring salt licks to the cows and bring in fence posts and fence tape. And, we load up the Jeep and we all head out there and work on fencing and cows and treating cows and so forth. And I bought some light bulbs for the dash so I could see at night, or as it starts to get dark, so I could see the dashboard, the oil pressure gauge, the fuel gauge, the battery indicator and so forth, speedometer, tachometer. 10 of them for $1.16. And I bought some other light bulbs for another vehicle. We have 10 of them for 99 cents. That's with shipping included from China. Shipping included. And if you think about it, we couldn't mail the empty package without the light bulbs across the street for 99 cents, without the contents here in the United States. So how is it possible that China can do this? Well, it certainly is not a level playing field. But, if I'm going to be buying Chinese light bulbs, from a company that buys them and in bulk and then packages them in the United States, or I can buy the same light bulbs right from China. Why should I pay the middleman? Why should I pay the company that would charge me $4 for 2 light bulbs in the United States when I can get 10 of them shipped, delivered in my hand for 99 cents? Why would I do that? I wouldn't. So we've done it to ourselves. And those who have been selected for representation have stuck it to us. And this is how it ends. It ends by us voting with our wallets. That's how I see it, John. How about you?
Well, the way I look at it, we do what we can to help our personal finances, but it doesn't fix the structural problem. And it'll be interesting to see, while it's not a State of the Union address tomorrow, it is a joint session of Congress, and there'll be discussion on the new budget during that presentation. And I just wonder if we could see behind the scenes if he's figured out that there's a financial problem that this country has that nobody can fix. Because he's already said that, they're leaving Social Security, Medicare, and other entitlements alone. And when you look at what is called discretionary spending, which is the real work that the government does, some of which is constitutional, some isn't. So it includes things like military spending, which he's planning on increasing. Mm-hmm. The entire discretionary side of things is just over $1 trillion a year. So when he talks about cutting, $10 trillion over 10 years, which would be $1 trillion a year, it's an impossibility because, that would only leave $100 billion for the entire discretionary budget.
And presidents have discretionary spending funds too, right? They can spend money on things that they feel like spending it on without approval, or it's been pre-approved. And Dwight David Eisenhower built that bunker in West Virginia, right? Under a golf course with his discretionary funds. And he kept it secret from all of us until the 90s, the early 90s, when we found out that bunker was under the golf course in West Virginia. I've been there. I've seen it.
People talk about the money that's missing from the Defense Department. It's not missing. We just don't know where it was spent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we undoubtedly have a new facility, or maybe even more than one, since the Greenbrier was built.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about, the Greenbrier. And it had a theater, it had a transmission studio, television transmission studio, a satellite antenna, crematorium, operating room, and room for about 550 of our finest selected alleged representatives. Not their families. So these selected representatives would go to the Greenbrier Hotel in case of a nuclear catastrophe to keep everybody safe. Well, to keep them safe. Not us. Not their children, not their spouses, just them. And how much good do you think they would do worrying about their children and their spouses when they were underground, safe from contamination? And who are they? Well, they're the people involved in causing it, the contamination. By the way, John, there's a lot of concern about the radiation circling Europe right now, and has been for well over a week. Are we going to be talking about that today?
I don't have an article for that, but it's curious. They're trying to figure out where it's coming from. So far, I've only read about radioactive iodine, which means that it's a recent release because the half-life on iodine is very short. If it is from a tactical nuke, like some believe, the couple were set off in the Ukraine within the past couple of weeks, it makes me wonder, why aren't we seeing other radionuclides? So, as usual, we don't know the whole picture.
Yeah, it says that, I'm looking at a post, allnewspipeline.com, as Greece is news reports iodine-131 has been recently detected in tiny amounts in the ground level atmosphere during week 2 of January 2017 in northern Norway. Iodine-131 was also detected in Finland, Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, France, Spain, until the end of January. I'll post that on the website, usaprepares.com, during the next break. Where would you like to start, John?
There's so many places, and we don't really have time before the break. But, I used to have a tale of two droughts up there, and, California's been receiving a lot of rain and snowfall, and, it's interesting that they have so many dams that are, just about to the brim, and they've had this record snowfall lately and feet of snowfall, and now they're going to be hit with 75-degree temperatures, which is going to cause a lot of snow melt. And the question is, where's that going to go? Because they used to use the dams to make their reservoirs from the snow melt, but since the dams are pretty much full, and of course they haven't had time to fix the structural problems, it could get interesting very quickly.
Interesting you say that, John. Yesterday it was 39 degrees here at the farm in Missouri, and it was snowing. It was snowing here, and it snowed for a few hours. And after the snow, we had puddles left from the melting snow. And it seemed unusual to me, very, very large snowflakes, huge snowflakes. So for a couple hours it snowed, 39 degrees, kind of unusual. I haven't seen that in a very long time, but yep, that's what we had. And the ground could not absorb. Captain John Regan's with us, U.S. Air Force Reserves retired. Engineering is John Harmon at GCN. John Harmon is the man who is responsible for putting USA Prepares on Genesis Communications Network. Thanks so much, John. John Regan, where would you like to start?
Well, while we're down the California rabbit hole, back during the drought days, we talked about the ramifications, and it affects our food supply. It affects where millions of people live. California has about 40 million people, and if the water had, or the drought had continued to the way it was, and there was no water for drinking, you could see maybe half the state having to relocate, which begs the question, where would they relocate to? Because, 10, 20 million people needing to move somewhere, it takes time to build that kind of infrastructure. And, it's a serious issue. But on the flip side, floods are, at least as bad as droughts as far as agriculture goes. So you still are looking at that problem if those dams go. Plus, with the drought, at least the houses are still there. How many homes and businesses would be lost? And unless they were in a floodplain where you're required to have flood insurance, and unless you opted for flood insurance, you have no insurance coverage for that mortgage you're paying. And that has all kinds of financial ramifications. And then rather than what would be a staged exodus from California in the case of drought, now you've got millions of people without homes with nowhere to go to. And we have our own refugee crisis right here in America. So stay tuned. It could get interesting.
John, as you said that, I was thinking, so when you have a flood, and let's say the flood is in a neighborhood, think about this. What's in your garage? What's in your basement that would get flooded? Roundup, maybe, for your lawn. Insecticides. Gasoline, for your mowers. Gasoline in the weed whacker. Oil, motor oil, mouse poison. Then you have the septic systems. And so the septic systems get flooded. and they leak. And then you have the sewage treatment plants, which are typically at a low point in a village because sewage runs downhill, not uphill. And so that gets cross-connected with the water supply. And what's in the sewage treatment plants? Well, let's say you have a hospital nearby. Well, that hospital waste goes into the sewage treatment plant. So does the industrial waste, manufacturing waste, and whatever gets flushed down the drain. Think about all that. So when you talk about flooding, it's not just the muck that ends up in your garage and in your first floor and in your basement. It's the cross-connecting of all of these poisons, these toxins that we make that get cross-connected with the potable water supply that we drink. And does boiling water remedy the toxins that come from paint thinners, gasoline? No, boiling doesn't. It kills germs if you boil it long enough and hard enough, but it doesn't kill the toxins. It doesn't neutralize the toxins. So flooding is a bigger problem than we may realize. And certainly it's a nuisance, but it is a potentially deadly nuisance, not just from the water and drowning, but from the toxins and the contamination. It's a good point, John.
And I just want to mention, the top link in my post is on the Hear the Watchman conference, just over a month away. And, I'm going to be getting into how much time do we have left? And I'll pick up with that after I get back from the break.
Yeah. How much time do we have left? Captain John Regan's with us. I'm Vince Finelli. This is USA Prepares. Please don't touch that dial. Captain John Regan's with us. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. We've clicked on the news tab. So, John, how much time do we have left?
Well, I think people are going to be very surprised on the financial side of things. But there's other things as well, and part of that gets into prophecy, and part of it just, even if you're a devout atheist, by the time I get done with my presentation here in Dallas next month, you're going to have a list of things that we don't have any workarounds for, that pretty much any one of them would have a profound impact on the lifestyle that we currently lead. And that's if we get around the financial problem. So it's it's really going to be a buckle your seatbelt presentation, and parts of it are going to be quite disturbing. And I'll be giving a recap on that after the conference. If you'd like to come, like I say, that first link takes you to the Hear the Watchman website. If you use my last name, Regan, R-A-G-A-N, no E's, you can get $20 off your tickets. They are also accepting sign-ups for the streaming of the event, and my understanding is they'll have the link for that on the first, but if you go there now and sign up, they'll email you when the link becomes active. And that's $39 for the entire conference, and it's good for 30 days after the conference, so you get a chance to go back and listen. And even if you go to the conference, you may want to sign up for this just so you can go back and listen again. And during that sign-up, they ask where you heard it, and if you can't remember how to spell my name, just say Captain John, and they'll know who you're talking about. But it's pretty serious. I'm still gathering some information to make some of the calculations myself, but we do not have years before this financial situation unravels, and there are so many current signs, and we talk about them here all the time, saying that you only see this when we're in recession. And it goes back, if you remember when Obama changed the definition of GDP, and the general rule of thumb is you subtract 3% from what they say, and that's what it used to be, and that means we've been in negative GDP territory for some time. And that's the official definition for recession. So since we still have a positive GDP, nobody's calling recession yet. And this is the recession that we don't get up from. There's just too much debt, and we've been talking about that for 5 years now. They've managed to kick the can down the road a lot more than anybody expected, but they've done that with tens of trillions of dollars of debt, with quantitative easing, with zero interest rates, with negative interest rates. They've even tried experiments with the universal basic income, and that's just blown up in their faces. So unless they have some other rabbits to pull out of their hat, the best they can do is cause some minor blips on the way down. It's the Wile E. Coyote. You've run off the edge of the cliff, and it's only so long before gravity takes hold, and it's going to be a long way down. Vincent,
John, I talked to someone who participates in this class about a militaria show that occurred over the weekend in Louisville. And this is where collectors from all over the world fly in, drive in, and they come to buy, trade, sell military artifacts. I'm talking about ribbons, medals, of all kinds, uniforms, badges. And what I learned during this discussion was that the prices have fallen dramatically, and the number of people interested in buying these military artifacts from World War I, World War II, even before World War I, is drying up dramatically. Prices have fallen. And the question I asked naturally was, why? And the answer was because people don't have much money to spend on these kinds of things anymore. And people who, we'll call this a hobby, people who had a hobby of researching military artifacts and buying them and storing them and showing them off to their friends and on websites and forums and so forth, are getting out of the hobby. They are selling their collections piece by piece because they think that the market is drying up and the market is not increasing for them. So if they looked at these collectibles as an investment, the feeling is, generally speaking, that it's not a good idea to stay in the market because the value, the prices of these collectible items is falling. So that's just one more indication, John, of what you're talking about. And when you talk about what do you see happening, are you talking about, well, gasoline will be tough to get, insulin will be tough to get, electricity will be spotty? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the question is what happens, and do we have that EMP type attack that takes down things where we're totally left without a supply chain? Even if that doesn't happen, people, like you say, are broke. They don't have much money, and even if they manage to change Obamacare, that doesn't change a lot of the other problems, including the pension fund problems. Mm-hmm. And let's look at what's going on with the markets. You have the stock market at record highs. Every time this has happened in the past, you've got a big correction, usually 50%. And there's some analysts out there saying that this time is going to be a 70 or even 90% correction. But even a 50% correction, is pretty darn damaging for whatever you have set aside. Now, if you've invested in bonds, or the pension fund is invested in bonds, as the interest rates go up, the value of those bonds go down. Now, while the interest rate's low, then you're not making any kind of interest off those bonds. So that's bad. Pension funds also tend to be invested in housing, which is, again, gone up into another bubble, so that bubble will be popping. And then some of these funds have invested in derivatives, and, no telling which way those things are going to go when all of this stuff starts happening. And since a lot of that is public pensions, again, there's only one or two ways you can go with that. You can tax the people more in order to pay for the promises you made with the pensions, or you cut the pensions, or some combination thereof, which is what they're trying here in Dallas. And it's just another effort to kick the can down the road.
The first Great Depression was in October of 1929. And here's a quote, John. And this was from the Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon. And he said this in September 1929. There's no cause to worry. The high tide of prosperity will continue. Here's another one. This is from Yale economist Irving Fisher, October 16th, 1929. Stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. What a crash a couple weeks after that, right? Massive crash. It took World War II to pull us out of it. And then October 24th, 1929, from Chairman Arthur Reynolds, Continental Illinois Bank of Chicago. The crash is not going to have much effect on business. Here's another one from the president of Equitable Trust Company in October 25th, 1929. I have no fear of another comparable decline. So, John, you talk about, and we've mentioned this over the years, you talk about the crash is coming, and then you can read in the news and you can hear on the TV news reports that everything's okay. Well, here are some guys that said kind of the same thing. Here's a guy, President Hoover, May 1930. While the crash only took place 6 months ago, I'm convinced we have passed the worst and will continue with continued unity of effort. We shall rapidly recover. Secretary of Labor, James Davis, September 1930. We've hit the bottom and we're on the upswing. And the Alfred Sloan Jr. of General Motors Corporation, November 1930, said, I see no reason why 1931 should not be an extremely good year. So here are the captains of industry and government and education telling us that things were going to be, fine. And they weren't all the way until the end of World War II.
The experts that want to run every aspect of your life.
Right. John, when we come back, what are we going to focus on?
Let's talk about, have you been leaked?
Have you been leaked? Passwords. Yep. Very important. Have your passwords been compromised? Coming up right after the break. John, there's just one more quote I'd like to share. I think it's quite apropos about the Great Depression, the first Great Depression. Will Rogers said this. He said, you see, in the old days, there were mighty few things bought on credit. Your taste had to be in harmony with your income, for it had never been any other way. I don't reckon there's ever been a time in American homes when there was as much junk in them as there is today. Everybody's got more than they used to have, but they haven't got as much as they thought they ought to have. If we could just go back at least 2 or 3 years and do our buying a little more carefully, why, we'd be okay. That's what Will Rogers had to say about the Great Depression. Right on point. Wouldn't you say, John Regan?
And how many houses do you drive by where the cars are parked in the driveway because the garages are full and people have storage rooms that they have to rent off-site to store all the stuff?
And those pods and storage containers and on and on and on. You're absolutely right. Okay, passwords, John. How much trouble are we in?
Well, passwords in plain text were leaked September 2016 to February 2017 on Cloudflare, which you might not have heard of, but they host over 5 million websites, and because of that, there's no way we could list them all. Includes some fairly popular ones, including Fitbit, Uber, OkCupid, Medium, and Yelp. So the only good advice is, go in, change all your passwords. And I do recommend using a password manager. I use LastPass, and they've changed their policy so it's free for both your mobile devices like your smartphone and your desktop. It used to be you had to choose one or the other. And that way you don't have to remember all the passwords. You can create longer, more secure passwords. And it's still a bit of a pain when you have a situation like this where the site's been compromised, but at least it helps to make the situation more manageable. And if you think that, there's not really a financial situation there, yeah, but especially if you've used that password on other sites, those sites can be compromised for you, and they can, go and do things like make comments that could get you in trouble. And how do you prove that it's not you that made it since it was your password? The joys of computers.
Yeah, and they're taking over our lives, and I'm resisting it at every chance I can, especially with the phones. By the way, I met a gal, John, who had a watch on, and this was one of those Fitbit kind of things. And she was telling me she was in the healthcare industry, and she was telling me that her hospital, her employer, pays her for doing certain things, being healthy, and so this watch is monitoring her activities, and it's all being sent to the internet, her activities. So if she cuts the lawn, she gets $1, and if she all kinds of things, and doing some of these activities will pay for the watch, $200 watch. So more ways of monitoring what we're doing, and I really have a feeling that this young lady had no idea that her information, her private, personal information, including her heartbeats, is being recorded and stored without really her understanding all that's happening with it. I'm not going to wear one of those watches. Not going to happen. So passwords, quite important. What I do is I change them, but I commit them to memory, and I don't have a storage medium for managing my passwords. I do it manually. John, what are we going to do when we come back?
I do want to cover slime time from hour 1, and then we'll get into hour 2.
Yeah, slime, very, very important. Borax, how dangerous it is for young people, for all of us. Please stay tuned. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Captain John Regan. John, I heard a commercial for Mercedes-Benz on this broadcast a few minutes ago, and I like Mercedes. And I buy used Mercedes-Benz automobiles. And our son borrowed my 1996 E300 Mercedes diesel that I recently purchased for about $3,000, actually $3,000. And I asked him how it did. I worked on the engine, and he said, "Dad, I got between 44 and 47 miles to the gallon." Now, this is not one of those half-size cars. This isn't like a third of a car, half a car, or a smart car. This is a mid-size car, very heavy, and it's a 3-liter diesel, inline 6-cylinder, 44 to 47 miles to the gallon on the highway. It's quite impressive, don't you think, John Regan?
Sounds like something that they need to ban.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so slime. Slime is the topic that we're on right now, right? Man.
I saw an article a couple of weeks ago about how if you wanted Elmer's glue, you might have a hard time finding it because it's being used to make slime. And, okay, what's the harm in that? And then I come across this article. There's a warning because this slime craze can cause eye injury and even fertility problems. because what they do is they mix borax with the glue, and if that gets into your eyes, it causes problems. Even worse than that, if you get a high enough level of the borax ingested, it affects fertility. So, and kids are supposed to be supervised on this, but you may have teachers that aren't aware of the dangers and may not be monitoring as closely as they should, or the kids might want to try this at home without supervision, and it's one of those things that once the damage is done, it's done.
John, we used to wash clothes with borax. There used to be commercials for 20 Mule Team Borax on television in the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah, well, like anything, a lot of things in normal usage, it's not a problem. There's lots of things that, if you get in your eyes, it's a bad thing. But I've even used borax because, and I don't have, solid scientific evidence for this, but supposedly take like a pinch of borax, put it in a glass of water, and then drink that like on a daily basis. But that interferes with this nanotechnology that's being put into our bodies. And I did research that, that small amount really has no toxic effect on a human body. But it's even like water. If you have too much water, it's in essence toxic because it flushes your electrolytes out, and you can die from that. So while you can wash your clothes in and not have any ill effects, if you have enough of this, it's a problem. And they were saying here is to bring the solution to 1 gram of borax for 20 milliliters of water. But again, if teachers aren't paying attention, don't know better, or kids are doing this at home, they might not care about that recipe, and they just put more of the powder in.
Okay. On that same line of thinking, John, I was talking with one of our instructors on the phone yesterday, and he was asking me for some advice on how to repair a hole in sheetrock. And so he had a hole, and he was going to cut out the hole bigger and put a patch in it, a sheetrock patch. And I suggested that he wear a dust mask, a respirator, when he does it. And what I said was, the reason for that is we think that sheetrock is made out of gypsum, but a lot of sheetrock is now made out of fly ash. So they take these coal-fired electric generation plants, and the fly ash that's left after burning the coal is this white powdery substance, and they mix it with water, a little bit of glue, and they use that in place of gypsum. So now we have, a waste product from coal between two pieces of paper that now acts like, and is sold as sheetrock, gypsum sheetrock. So the plan is, try not to breathe that. So here we have, dust of all kinds that we should be concerned with, even gypsum, or what looks like gypsum. And there are plenty of people who have been sawing with a circular saw or a jigsaw or saber saw and sawed through pressure-treated lumber and have given themselves cancer because they inhaled the dust particles of the wood that was treated with arsenic and other chemicals. So we need to be very careful with pretty much everything we do. And if you're going to wash clothes, wash things in the laundry tub, you might want to wear some protective gloves to keep whatever those chemicals are that you're using off your hands, because those chemicals can be absorbed through your skin and you can poison yourself.
Well, on the preparedness side of things, we've talked about packaging food in 5-gallon buckets with diatomaceous earth, DE, and that takes care of the insect problem. If anything hatches, the DE will scratch them up and cause them to die. It's not something that you have to worry about ingesting because it's not toxic in that effect. But when you're packaging that food, One, you want to do it outside, and two, I would probably want to wear a dampened bandana because when you're working with that, it's a very light powder. Will fly all over the place, and that's not something that you want getting inside your lungs.
Yeah, and you can get silicosis from airborne silica. And as a matter of fact, that diatomaceous earth is used in some swimming pool filtration systems. And I think the very finest filtration system for a swimming pool is the diatomaceous earth type. It filters the finest. And on the package, you get this in a bag, and it can be 25 pounds or 50 pounds, and it'll say on there, don't breathe this. Don't breathe this. So whenever I used diatomaceous earth, I would make sure I knew which way the wind was blowing, and I would take a deep breath and hold my breath while I did it, and then as soon as I emptied the diatomaceous earth into the skimmer of the swimming pool, I would get out of there, and then I would breathe again, and that's what I would do. But I'm not saying that's the best approach. It's just I was so concerned about it because that dust gets in your lungs. And black lung disease, I'm sure you've all heard of that. That's what coal miners have been contracting for years and years and years by being in these dusty coal mines. What's next?
Well, Vincent, facts don't matter.
That's another post you've got, yes. A link right on your website, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. Facts don't matter.
We could probably spend a whole show on this. This talks about some experiments that were done where you end up getting confirmation bias, and it helps explain why we have such a hard time doing what we do. Is because whatever gets put into your brain first tends to stick, and that's why under communism they wanted to indoctrinate the kids early, because once you did that, very few of them could get out of that indoctrinated mindset.
Yeah, and like the moon landing. Like the moon landing.
Unfortunately, here in America, they infiltrated education, and so, as much as we want to fight it, facts just plain don't matter. So it's a sad state of affairs, but I'm not saying give up, but unfortunately, we just can't expect to see a mass conversion like we would like to see.
Agreed. This is an uphill battle. And I got a call from Werner Bach last night from New Brunswick, Canada. And we were talking about something akin to this. And I mentioned to Werner, he is adamant about, ringing the alarm and letting as many people know what's happening as possible. And I agree with him. And then I said, but, there's a price to pay for doing this. So if you ring the alarm, you become a target for ringing the alarm and waking people up. And you may be successful in waking some up, and you may not be successful, but there will be a price to pay for those who ring the alarm.
Yes, there is. And I know we're getting ready to come up on a break. Balanced budget. There's some talk about trying to get a balanced budget amendment passed. And that's one of the worst things that could happen because we need to have spending cut. Because if there's a balanced budget, then that just gives them a blank check to raise taxes. Because as is, they would have to raise taxes by another $1 trillion a year just to balance what the current spending is. And that doesn't count, like we've talked about, Social Security and Medicare, where they'd need all the rest of your income, just to keep things from getting worse. But
the term balanced budget sounds so good, John. It really does. Honey, we balanced the budget. We're doing really well. Really? Well, you're absolutely right. We've got to get spending in check. So, how do we do that? Well, we get rid of half of our government. That'd be a good start. That'd be a really good start. We'll be right back. Okay, John, we're back.
Well, they're at it again. We have a Democrat wanting to introduce a financial transaction tax. This version of it would only apply to stocks, bonds, and derivatives. There's the full-blown one that, if you trace it back to some PhD at a college in Wisconsin, that touts how if you tax all transactions that we can get rid of the income tax, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, the problem is that when you put even a small tax on these transactions, it makes many of them unprofitable so that they wouldn't occur to begin with, and therefore all your tax revenue goes away. Not to mention, in the form that's discussed, that's not in this bill, it would tax you basically for moving your money from one pocket to another. For example, from your checking account to your savings account, that would be taxed because it's financial transaction. And when you want to take money out of your savings account, that's another tax. It's just a insane idea. And if you look at the list of people that support it, you'll understand they're on the loony left side of things. But I wanted to just make you aware that they've not given up on it. They're trying again. I don't expect any progress with the current Congress that we have.
Well, I'm reading the press release from Representative Keith Ellison, Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, and it says here that America's working families need their country to invest in them again. Representative Ellison said the money raised from a wafer-thin tax on Wall Street's high-frequency trades could raise hundreds of billions of dollars to invest in our families, protect our environment, and increase opportunity for all Americans. If the United States joins the dozens of other nations already benefiting from a financial transaction tax, we can create millions of jobs while reducing dangerous market volatility. What a load that is. Create millions of jobs by stealing more money? Create millions of jobs. This guy's delusional.
Well, remember the lies.
This guy is just a common thief. It's an outrage.
It's no difference than when they were pushing the income tax amendment of the Constitution. It was only a very small amount, like 1% or so of the income, and would only affect those rich people in the Northeast. And look at how that's ballooned in the 100 years since that happened. The tax code is 7 times the size of the Bible, and it controls every aspect of our lives.
Yeah. There's some. I probably shouldn't get into this. I was going to just mention that the government wants to know from farmers how many cows, sheep, hogs, rabbits, ducks, chickens, how many tractors, how many horsepower, how many farm hands, how many people live there. That's the agricultural census, and every 10 years they want more and more and more information from us, and I think it's none of their business. I'll leave it at that. But this financial tax is just one more thing. Is there anything that they haven't figured out how to tax? And Hillary Clinton said it pretty well. She said, if it moves, we tax it. If it doesn't move, we regulate it. I think those were her words, or something very close to that. And so I guess what this guy, Representative Keith Ellison, is saying is, well, there's movement of digits, so let's tax them. Hey, are you going to talk about beverage tax and how well that worked out?
Yeah, I do want to talk about pea power next.
Okay. Pea power, as in urine. The power of urine. Very interesting. And maybe there's some potential there. And then we'll talk about the beverage tax and how well that worked out. We'll be right back. Captain John Regan's with us. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. Well, we're going to be talking about how to make a cell, an electric cell, or a combination of them with with urine, John.
And it actually goes beyond that, but yes, that's one of the components, urea. But to back up a bit, we've been talking about graphene lately, and one of the uses for that is producing inexpensive solar panels that have nearly the same efficiency as those that use the expensive metals, the platinum series metals. And that's just part of the equation, because when you have solar panels, the other side is batteries, because you have to be able to store it to be able to use it later. And when the sun goes down, you don't have solar panels producing power. And this appears to be a possible solution, and it comes out of Stanford. And the link goes directly to their website. And I've seen so many energy solutions in the past. And the problem is that what they're doing doesn't scale well. You can't just mass produce it, or it uses some exotic element that's in short supply. But with the graphene, it's like we discussed, they can make that out of vegetable oil, so they grow soybeans and make oil out of it, and instead of doing the bad thing and putting it in a human body, you can make solar panels with it. And then this looks to be a battery that can be produced at low cost and has good performance. And as another side benefit, it's non-flammable. The batteries that we're looking at for today, made of lithium and cobalt, how often do we read about a phone or some other device catching fire because of the battery? So these batteries are made from aluminum, which is a very abundant element, graphite, and the electrolyte's main ingredient, urea. And while that is found in mammalian pee, it's also produced by the ton when fertilizers are made. So that byproduct can be taken, put into these batteries, and now you've got inexpensive batteries to go with inexpensive solar panels. It would bring the cost of electricity down quite a bit. It doesn't solve all the problems of the world, but it looks like both of these technologies would be able to be done fairly easily with the current type of plants that we have now. And again, with products that are being produced now, no shortage of materials. It's like I say, it's very promising.
John, in elementary science class, I remember experimenting with voltaic cells, and that's an electrochemical cell that uses a chemical reaction to produce electrical energy. And I learned back in elementary school that you could take two dissimilar metals, two metals that are not the same, and put them in an electrolyte solution and generate electricity by doing that. So what do we talk about? You could use copper and zinc. You could use iron and, let's say, aluminum as the dissimilar metals. And as an electrolyte, you could use vinegar or lemon juice or even salt water. So an electrolyte, something that will carry electrical current as a liquid, and two dissimilar metals. As a matter of fact, class, if you take two dissimilar metals, and let's say you drive them into the ground, let's say 4 feet into the ground, and you separate them by, let's say, two rods, separate them by a foot. And if the ground is moist, you can put a millivoltmeter across, or a voltmeter across those two rods, and you will find that they are generating electricity. And if you put enough rods in the ground, you can get enough electricity to almost permanently light LED lighting, a small amount of LED lighting. And so how much maintenance is there? Well, you probably have to keep that area watered. Or if you're clever, you just put them in a ditch. Just dig a little depression, maybe 20 feet long, put the rods parallel to each other, and then wire them in series. And you'll probably have enough electricity generated to light LED lighting, a small amount of LED lighting. How long? Permanently. So just a thought. And I think we're onto something here, John. I really do. And our son wants to experiment with these, what we'll call them earth batteries. And if you'd like, you can just go to YouTube class and type in earth battery and watch some of the videos. And you may want to dig up some or scrounge around and get some pipes that are of dissimilar metals and try experimenting with them and see if it works for you as it does for these YouTubers. Great point, John. Thank you.
Well, you might remember Philly instituted a soda tax, and
Yeah.
I'm saying it's working.
Yeah.
Sales are down 30 to 50%, and they show a receipt here. A purchase that would have been $6.47 before the tax ballooned to $9.75, and people just aren't standing for it. And because of this big drop in beverage sales, there's now a whole lot of planning for layoffs. So had one of the city's largest distributors so that would cut 20% of its workforce in March. Owner of 6 ShopRite stores in Philly says he expects to get rid of 300 workers in the spring. His quote is, "People are seeing sales declines larger than anything they've seen up to this point in the city."
And I'm looking at this receipt on zerohedge.com. You've linked to this on your website, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, the news tab. So I'm looking at this receipt on the Post, and it shows what it is. It's Propel water, berry flavor, it looks like, $5.99 on sale. The person saved $1 by buying it at $5.99, I guess, instead of $6.99. The beverage tax was $3.04. The regular tax was added to that, 72 cents. Total bill for $5.99 worth of Propel water, $9.75. It's just one more example of what your government can do to destroy commerce. Now, we're not even talking about soda, John. This is like a flavored water, right?
Right.
I mean, this doesn't carry all the sugar that this tax was aimed at. The sugary beverage tax, right? It's not even soda. It's water, flavored water. Wow. What an outrage. What an outrage.
Yeah. Instead of reaping a lot of money from the soda tax, they're not only not reaping that, but they're losing income tax from people that used to have jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just one more example of how your government makes so many bad decisions. Like 100% of them are bad. Okay.
So, but following the development,
I was looking at a post on. Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I posted on the website about Sears, and customers are confused going into Sears stores because what they're seeing is it looks like remodeling efforts with no inventory or shelves that are bare and thanking customers for their patronage. I mean, I'm talking bare. Sears, it looks like Sears is having a really, really tough time. Just one more indication of how bad things really, really are. Sears has no idea what they're doing. And since the late 70s, they've really lost their ways. They really have. They used to be where America shops. And it's very sad to me because one of my very first jobs in high school was an employee of Sears Automotive as a mechanic. It's just very sad to see. And then, when you look at tools and you think, well, that's okay, I'll just buy Craftsman because it has a lifetime guarantee. Really? We don't know about the lifetime guarantee of Craftsman. We don't know if that's going to be honored or not when it appears that Stanley, the tool company, is buying the Craftsman brand. But we have no idea if they're going to honor the lifetime warranty or not. So what am I doing? I'm not buying any Craftsman. I'm not buying anything Craftsman. As a matter of fact, one of our instructors mentioned buying some Craftsman tools over the weekend, and I said, well, I'm not doing it because I don't know what what the future holds for Craftsman. I'm not going to do it. I'm not saying that they're bad tools. I'm just saying I don't know about the warranty, which was a big part of the Craftsman purchase. You'd say, well, if it breaks, I'll get a new one for free, lifetime, and that's what they used to do. And I don't know about now. I don't know. So, class, if you have any information about that, in the next few days, if you'd like to call in, let us know what you found out by trying to get Craftsman or Sears to honor the Craftsman warranty. I'd love to hear it. Back to you, John.
Well, assassination update, and a lot of this has been in the more mainstream news. Just want to make sure we touch on it here. The brother of the North Korean dictator was assassinated in an airport, and they determined that the substance used was VX nerve agent. So this is not something that's just an amateur type job. And two women came up to him and put this liquid on his face, and I haven't found how many minutes. Within a matter of minutes, he was dead. It's possible the girls didn't know what they were doing. They thought it was a prank, but the attack just took less than 2.5 seconds.
That's a really good warning for all of us, John. Very good point. VX nerve gas. We'll be right back. The financialstateoftheunion.com. We're at the news tab, John.
Well, Google listens and listens.
Oh, boy.
And listens.
And listens.
Oh. People are using, Google to search, and they're also using the voice-activated part, and it does. It is quite convenient, especially if you're in your car. And you may have it set up to where you say, "Okay, Google," and then it picks up and takes care of your search. The thing is, in order for it to listen for the "Okay, Google," it has to listen all the time. And it's recording basically everything you're saying, everywhere you're going. And this article gives you the links where you can go to see what they have. You can has a specific audio page. It also has a record of the locations you've been, and there's things you can do to, in theory, delete that. So if you're using Google that way, I recommend checking out this article.
John, what are your greatest concerns with this?
It's there's so many ways that this could be used against you. It's definitely being used to work with your shopping habits to try to get more money out of you.
Right.
But, Google is also trying to adjust the way you do other things, and that includes this prior election. They talk about the so-called Russian influence. Well, Google is trying to influence the election as well by what they display, and this is one of the ways that they know what's going on. They can identify trends, and this is in a way that's never been able to be done before in human history.
And so you're talking about recording everything that we say if we're willing to agree to use this technology. So how about these private conversations that young people have? Like we've talked about this before, the 11-year-old girl who hates her ex-boyfriend, and she hates him and wants to kill him. And then that gets permanently recorded and ends up in court later on. Susie, do you have an anger management problem? No. Have you ever wanted to kill anybody? No. Really, let me play this little recording that you made voluntarily in your parents' automobile. I'm very concerned about that kind of thing, John. I don't even want to go out in public because of all all of the cell phones that are potentially recording and videoing everything that goes on all around us. I just don't want to be part of it. I don't want to subject myself or our family to that. So what does that mean, John? That means disconnecting from a lot of potentially useful technology because it's being used against us.
But
and
don't
it
worry,
means
they're going to be putting microphones in all the Internet of Everything devices. So your light bulbs, your toaster, your dishwasher, everything that you're going to be buying will be listening in.
Yeah. So next time we say to our toaster, a little darker next time, please. That's what we're talking about, right? Or we're talking about booing when we were watching a sporting event on television, and now they know which team we like and which team we don't like because we're booing them. They even know which players we don't like if we participate in that, which I don't. I don't like it, John. I really don't. Is there a saving grace? Is there any way out of this other than just not participating? It's hard, right?
It's very difficult, and it's going to get worse.
John Regan, thank you so much for being with us. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. Please click on the news tab.